Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Basketball PH podcast. Enjoy the show.
Hello, what is up mga paps? This is your fantasy papi, Papi Roy, and welcome to the Fantasy Basketball PH, your Filipino brand of fantasy basketball. So, this is going to be a very what do you call this? A very exciting episode because this is our first episode wherein we'll be doing it in full English, but of course we'll be talking some Tagalog, and you'll understand why. You'll understand why we'll be dropping some Tagalog words today. But this is for our international viewers, and then even our Filipino who will watch me and watch me bleed to death because of me speaking in English. So what is up, mga paps? This is very exciting, and welcome to the Weekend Grind presented by Fantasy Basketball PH. So, we have a very, very special guest for today. He's going to be my co-host every weekend. We're gonna do it like for the whole season. You might know him in Twitter, but I let him actually introduce himself. Let's give it up for D-Mac.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you for having me. Really exciting to be on the show. Great to be joining our fans. Oh, I love it. I love that. Thank you. Thanks for the
What's
applause.
up?
Yeah, great to be on the show. I know that Filipinos, and I should say, firstly, kumusta to everyone. Thank
There
you
you go.
to all
There
your
you go.
followers as well. I had to put in a little bit of Tagalog there, and I'll let you know why in a minute. But yeah, really happy to be on the show. Thanks, Roy.
There you go. There you go. So, can I call you D-Mac? Because yeah, I just
Absolutely.
thought that it's gonna be a cool nick for you. So guys, Dimak here is actually has some roots. I believe your mom is a Filipina, right?
She is, yes. She grew up in Manila. She was born in Capiz. Yeah, so I've been to the Philippines many, many times. But unfortunately, Tagalog is not my strong suit. So hopefully, along this journey, we'll get to know each other and I'll learn some Tagalog off of you and your fans as well.
For sure, for sure. So, Dimak, aside from your quick introduction, can we all know what's your NBA fantasy basketball journey? When did you start? How many championship or trophies did you actually earn?
Yeah, absolutely. Roy, I've been doing it for probably only about 8 years, so I'm relatively new to the fantasy industry. But I've gained a real passion for it, particularly over the last couple of years, and um, that spurred on me creating NBA Fantasy Bible. So hopefully, guys can follow me on Twitter, get some advice, and hopefully help other people learn about fantasy and hopefully get them the championship that they all desire.
There you go. So remember guys, I've been always telling you that I have a Twitter handle, but I'm not super active there. On the contrary, DMAC here is super active. So if you have any questions like what he mentioned, and if you have just thoughts about fantasy basketball, I'm pretty sure he'll find a way to respond. So I guess our tandem could be a very very strong force soon in the fantasy basketball scene, and this is a way to represent Filipinos, right? Because I've been preaching that
Absolutely.
I've been preaching that we Filipinos has the love and passion for basketball, but in reality, we're kind of small than like the usual NBA players. But props to our kabayan Jalen Green and Jordan Clarkson actually, raising the flag. But in general, we have several names. Like I don't know if you know this Johnny Abarientos, were way back. The Charlotte Hornets was actually is very fond of Johnny Abarientos, and they plan to um, uh, get him and bring him to the NBA, similar to how Maxi Bogues plays, but it didn't pan out. Then now we have Kai Soto. So hopefully Kai will get there, right?
And I love that you brought up Kai Soto because he actually plays for my hometown team in the NBL in Australia, the Adelaide 36ers. So that's where I'm from. I currently live in Perth, but I still barrack for Adelaide 36ers, and I know he's an integral part of that team.
Yeah, and they just smashed the Phoenix Suns. How about that?
Absolutely. What a game that was. Tremendous. Yes.
Okay. So, our topic for today, we're going to talk about players. Sorry, I wasn't able to show this, but yeah, this is Daniel or DMAC McKee. And then follow him at NBA Fantasy Bible at Twitter. He'll be actually posting or creating his own YouTube channel, possibly Facebook page, and IG as well. So, we'll be posting that very soon. Then going back, our topic for today's guys is the NBA fantasy players that people, not only me, some mine, maybe some are from DMAC. Mostly, you see this list of names from your favorite fantasy basketball sites and your favorite fantasy analysts. So let's talk about that for a second, and then let's have a very wonderful discussion, probably around 30 minutes to 45 minutes about this list. So let's start it with first round. Actually, not within first round, possibly like the tail of the last picks. Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving. Bro, what can you say about let's start with Anthony Davis.
We'll start with AD, the brow. Perennially a very strong fantasy producer over the years. And since he's come to the Lakers, he has dropped off significantly. And there's always concerns around his health and staying on the court and all these trips to the locker room. You always see the Twitter updates and you get concerned. But now in the last couple of years, his production has really dropped off. Having said that, last season, and we'll get to the debate in a minute, but having said that, last season, he was per game still the 9th ranked fantasy producer per game. Having said that, across the entire season, in totals, he was only the 93rd ranked player. So you can see the discrepancy between per game value versus total value because of the risk of injury that AD possesses. What are your thoughts, Roy?
Yeah. So, if you're talking about per game, I'm pretty sure in the last 5 years, Anthony Davis has been within the top 10. If we're talking about the per game basis, the only thing that actually dinged him since last year was his free throw percentage. So for some reason, he actually kind of fell down for around between 65% to 70%, right? So
Yeah, so
if
last year it was around the 70% mark, where his career mark has been around the 80%, just under 80%, 79.5%. So it has been a dramatic decrease over the last 2 years.
yeah, and imagine if that goes up, and then if actually the Lakers newscasters and their coaching staff are telling the truth, wherein probably this is the year wherein there's going to be a passing of the torch from LeBron James to Anthony Davis. They were preaching that they will be focusing more on Anthony Davis this year, given that, LeBron James is kind of like getting older, but it doesn't seem that way. But nonetheless, the Lakers really need Anthony Davis to really step up if they want to win the chip or at least be a solid contender in the West. So if that is true, then there's a big chance he'll gonna have a big year. Still, would his knees or shoulder or whatever injury agree that he can actually have a big year?
Yeah, and that's the real question. So I know that he's come out in the last couple of weeks saying that last year his 3-point shot actually really dropped off, and he was only shooting at around 18% from the 3-point mark, which is atrocious even for a big man standards. But he was shooting a lot better than that in previous years. And he's saying that his wrist was an undisclosed reason for his drop off last season. Hopefully that's now better. But if it's not his wrist, what else could it be? Last week he pulled out of preseason game, or it's actually just a couple of days ago, just because of back tightness as well. So there's always something with AD. So you need to take that in mind, not just the per game value, but also the risk of him sitting for length of period, multiple games.
Okay. So with that said, are you going to draft AD if he's available first part of the second round?
Roy, that's a tough one. I probably won't. In my first 2 rounds when I'm drafting, I want to be fairly safe. The old adage is that you can't win a fantasy league in the first two rounds, but you can definitely lose it. And so if you were to get AD and he had a repeat of last season when he was the 93rd ranked player, then you're in all sorts of trouble. So if he's in the early part of the second round, I would probably pass on him. Having said that, if he was to fall down to, let's say, the middle to late stages of the second round, I would probably take a punt. The old no risk, no reward. That is definitely a high risk move, but also a high reward move as well. What about you, Roy?
So to make this very interesting, I am actually gonna draft AD in the turn. Usually, at
Wow.
least in the past, what I call this draft that I had, Carl Anthony Towns is actually falling to the possibly last pick. So I was thinking if I could get Carl Anthony Towns and then partner him with Anthony Davis, given that there's a very big hole of scarcity for blocks, I might really, risk it all. I do understand that it's gonna be your first two players, but I think picking the last for this year, especially if it's more than 12 team, it could it for you to actually try to win the chip. I would actually put my feet like on the other side of the corner and try to get a very solid value there despite the what I call this the injury risk. Unless if it's 12 team, then I'm because Tyrese Halliburton, well, I doubt Tyrese Halliburton is going to end up in the last pick. Possibly Damian Lillard, possibly maybe Trey Young, maybe Carl Anthony Towns. So you can go back to back with like Carl Anthony Towns and Damian Lillard, stuff like that. But if it's beyond 12 team, I am kind of like comfortable drafting Anthony Davis just because of that specific stat that he has. Because looking at it, if I'm gonna count which players can influence you heavily for the blocks category, specifically for head-to-head formats, we have Anthony Davis, we have Robert Williams, already injured, we have Miles Turner. We can talk about it him later, but there are rumors that no, not rumors, more of like theory that if the Indiana Pacers tanks, maybe Miles Turner gets benched or whatnot, and then who else, Triple J, which is also on the shelf, and then who else, possibly Jarrett Allen. So you won't take Jarrett Allen on the second round, right? So possibly that's one of the angle I'm looking at. But yeah, this is it's tough, bro. It's really tough.
It is, and you brought up scarcity of blocks, and a lot of people are looking at punting blocks because of the scarcity of blocks out there this season. So you raise really good points. So AD is a big call at the turn, but I don't dislike it. It's a big call, but I actually do like it.
It's going to be because imagine if it's like 3 years ago, you have Carl Anthony Towns and Anthony Davis. Oh, that's gonna kill
Oh,
the league.
you've won. Yeah.
Next player. So on the flip side, this player doesn't have any injuries as of the moment. Even last year, even the season ago, before that, he's actually kind of like healthy. But it's about his off court antics that people are actually aren't comfortable of drafting this next guy because Kyrie Irving has like a random random event in his life that could be a reason that he misses game. So with that said, would you also, be comfortable in getting Kyrie Irving in the turn?
I would be more comfortable taking Kyrie over AD, to be honest. And yes, he's a very unique individual. But again, look at his stats set. Last season, although he only played 29 games for the season, he was the fifth ranked player in 9 cat. That's tremendous. Um, but yeah, like you said, there could be a whole raft of different reasons as to why he may miss games. But I believe that his body is more sound than AD. So I would take the risk with Kyrie, and I'd prefer to take Kyrie over AD at that point.
I mean, Kyrie Irving actually helped a lot of GMs last season to win their playoffs. That's how good Kyrie Irving, and that's without playing in games that were where's that? Possibly Toronto, or because of the vaccine concerns, right? And now those are gone.
Right.
And then they seem to be happy. You can see IG post that him and KD are actually dining while Ben Simmons is just in the side looking at
He's the
them.
third wheel. He's the
Yeah,
third wheel. Yeah, I saw that picture as well.
literally the third wheel.
Yeah.
So I do agree about Kyrie Irving. Actually, I just finished Fantasy Basketball PH League 2 draft earlier before we started. That's the reason why we are late. So shout out to the FBPH League 2 folks there. I'll be posting our drafts. I actually got Kyrie Irving I paired him with Luka Doncic. I picked fourth. So I think I can't let him slip. I really I never thought he would fall to me, but that happened. So I was super happy to get Kyrie Irving. I had actually in the Lock on Fantasy Basketball Bowl. I also have Kyrie Irving because he also fell far in the second round. So well, I guess I'm actually putting a lot of chips to Kyrie Irving. So let's go, Kyrie. um,
Let's do it, Kyrie.
so with that said, because another angle here for Kyrie Irving is going to be his contract year, and then he lost a lot of money in the past season. So I'm gonna ask you, DMAC, when you analyze fantasy basketball value specifically for players, does those stories or news have weight in your analysis?
I disregard contract year talk. It doesn't have much weighting to how I analyze things. Um, but the narrative around Kyrie is really important. I think he does have a fair bit to prove, not just about in terms of getting a bumper contract for next season and beyond, but in terms of proving a few people wrong. And I think Brooklyn have a fair bit to do this season. KD with the turmoil, with the trade rumors, and now he was going, then he was staying. Um, so I think Brooklyn, Kyrie, KD, now Simmons, they've got a fair bit to prove. So I think it's going to be a really good year for Brooklyn, and they're my Smokies for the champions. I think they'll win it all this season.
And given that there's just a couple of days before we start the NBA fantasy season, I'm gonna give some golden nuggets to our fantasy viewers. To be honest, I really like the Brooklyn's playoff schedule, especially if you check if your league starts from week 20 to 21 to 22. I mean, there's several good players that only plays two, specifically our reigning and defending number one fantasy player in the league, Nikola Jokic. So some says there's no hole for Jokic, but hey, if your finals is on week 22, Denver Nuggets only has 2 games. So I guess that's another thing. If you're someone that is fond of really checking out those schedules, which you really have to. But for me, I just it's just a little bit of consideration, not so much. But if that's part of your motivation, then I guess that's an additional reason why you really have to, kind of like draft Kyrie Irving. But if not Kyrie, then draft Ben Simmons or any Brooklyn net. But I guess there's like the big big players from Brooklyn for fantasy basketball is their big three. and Nick Claxton maybe if they don't trade or then they don't get any big within the season. Okay, now before we move to our next slide, the bud is here. Let's just quickly check in our comments here. Papi Jan, Vincent Estabilio, need thoughts on my draft. 12 team head to head 9 cats. I got Harden, LBJ Kid. Wow, there's a lot of names here. Zion, Ben Simmons, Miles, Jakob Pertl, PJ Wash, Januel, KPJ, Herter, Ivy for backups. Let me just start it quickly. Obviously, you're punting free throws because you have Ben Simmons, you have Jakob Pertl, PJ Wash, Zion. Well, initially, my comments here is, well, you started with Harden, so his free throws influence, given even though it kind of like dipped for last season, I think it goes up a little bit. So it would have been nice if you build around Harden and then you saved his free throw percentage. But then again, this was already done. So looking at it, it's more of like a what you call this counting stat build. So you have scoring, mostly assist. You're good at assist because you have Kate, LBJ, Harden, and Simmons here. Steals, blocks, rebounds, points. So I guess this is for me. It's a decent draft. It five. The build of counting stats has is doesn't fare well in a balanced build that has a good draft because you easily lose turnovers, you easily lose field goal percentage, you easily lose free throw percentage. So if they drafted well, so they got the good pieces that rebounds or get dimes, then then punting doesn't usually fare well. But given that it's head to head, maybe, and it's you just need 5 categories, I'm pretty sure that this could go far. How about you, Dima?
Yeah, at first glance, I thought not the greatest of pairings with Harden starting off really strong with free throws, similar to what you said, Roy. But just going through, I think you're strong in a lot of categories. Even finishing with Ivy, a lot of turnovers last game, but he's looking really good for a first-year player. I think he looks good. So I think it's a solid team. I've got high hopes for Ben Simmons as well. His free throws are still going to be hurtful. But I think it's a really solid team.
There you go. Thanks, bro. Next is Mark Pagaduan. I'm 7th round pick. What's a good strategy for it? Well, I'll let Dimac start his comments here.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. It's probably the least ideal spot in the draft order. You either want to be right at the start or around that 10 to 12 mark. 7th is tough, but you never know. Things may fall to you. You may be able to get someone like a James Harden, potentially even a Steph Curry as well. So I think you just have to wait and see. Someone may push up and someone may fall to you. So don't go in thinking that you'll punt straight away, that you never should go into a draft thinking of a punt strategy. So let's see what happens after the first couple of picks. But if someone falls to you, take that and work from that point on.
Yeah. And then for me, I agree. There, we're in picking in the middle, especially like late middle, is tough because you'll have a moment where hey, am I reaching too far if I get good value like beyond like for example you pick Tyrese Halliburton, but you can actually pick him there. But I mean, like what I've mentioned earlier, if you pick last, there's Damian Lillard, there's Kyle Anthony Towns. So, you know what I'm saying? So I do understand that it's either you go in the early part or you go last. At least for this year, I find it more comfortable. But in the middle part, the silver lining there is majority of the safer first round picks are there. It's not sexy, but it's safe. The likes of Lamelo Ball, Jason Tatum. For me, games played and then age and then what they bring you is a clean slate, meaning you can actually go in any direction from your first pick, given that basically they don't have any heavy punt categories in their game. So I guess that's the silver lining there. But I mean, I mean, DMAC actually hit the mark there. Okay, let's go back to our topic. That the dynamic duo of the Los Angeles Clippers, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Bro, who would you rather have? Would you rather have the Claw or PG-13?
Now, this comes back to your format as well. If it's Roto, it's Kawhi all the way. I think games cap Roto, of course, you lean towards the better player, better per game player. Head to head, that's a tougher proposition. I would still go for Kawhi, and we know that he will miss a lot of games. And I think he was the pioneer. Him and Pop were the pioneers of maintenance and rest days. But I still like Kawhi's outlook, and I think he's got, again, similar to the Brooklyn guys, he's got a fair bit to prove this season as well. The guys haven't done anything at the Clippers since the huge trade a few seasons ago. So I think Kawhi's got a fair bit to prove, as does PG. But I would take Kawhi just for the per game upside. What about you, Roy?
Yeah, so for me, given that people actually hated these two, especially for last season and the past season, specifically for Paul George, because Kawhi, if, in the past few seasons, people are actually dodging him. But for Paul George, I mean, if you drafted Paul George last year, I mean, you were messed up pretty bad because he actually what played how many games, right?
He
So
played
for
31 games last season.
exactly. So now, actually, I'm torn because of the options that you have. If these two slides, so if these two slides, usually you have a choice with several bigs available in the draft. Usually, like you have Domantas Sabonis, Pascal Siakam, Bam Adebayo, and then you have two guys who you know are in per game basis are really monsters, but there will be always a hesitation if you wanted to, trust the Los Angeles Clippers because it's not only the injury risk, not only the load management, but because of how deep the Los Angeles Clippers is. If they actually play good, which I expect them to do, then there's a lot of motivation for the Clippers to really, rest their big name players because they have a very deep bench. And then additionally to that, LA Clippers has a lot of back-to-back games for this season. So I'm kind of like torn because I'm someone who thinks that if I'm gonna risk it all, I want to go like all in. That's the reason that I'm kind of like more comfortable in drafting Anthony Davis. So for this one, I might draft Paul George over Kawhi, similar to DMAC. Roro definitely Kawhi head to head. Paul George ish, tough call. But if I'm gonna choose between the two, it's gonna be Paul George. On top of that, DMAC, what position or what rank would you or are you comfortable in drafting these two guys?
I did pick Kawhi, and I would be comfortable taking Kawhi at the end of the second round. He does have first round upside, as we are all aware. So end of second round for me, and same goes for Paul George around that spot. But it's a bit of a flip of the coin, but I prefer Kawhi over PG.
Got it. And then additionally, Kawhi's thigh is quite large for this season. So something to if if you're a fan of Kawhi, you should be very happy because seems like dude's very buff this year.
Yeah,
Oh,
Kawhi's thighs. Yeah.
do you eat? Have you tasted Jollibee Chicken Joy?
Absolutely. I used to live off it every time I went to Manila. Used to live off of it. Delicious.
Yeah, and speaking of Thai, if you eat at Jollibee, at least us here, who actually kind of like eats Jollibee for like a lot of number of days per week, Thai part is like the most, the best part that you can ever taste Jollibee chicken with, because there's a lot of
Oh, the
skin
most
there.
succulent, the most.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So the next time you eat Jollibee
Roy,
chicken.
it's after midnight, but you're making me salivate. I shouldn't want to eat right now, but I really want to eat right now.
There you go.
I do want
That's the
to
Philip.
just on a just on a tangent. I just saw notifications, breaking news that Bradley Beal has entered COVID protocols. Shouldn't impact him for opening night, but just keep that in mind as well. So he'll probably be out for about a week. What's protocols now? 5 days. So
Five
keep that
days.
in mind
Yeah.
as well.
I guess that's good news for us, because probably people might, so some are kind of like really impacted with those kind of news, so he might slide more. And I really love Bradley Bill in the third round. I mean, he has a very, very solid second round value if those field goal percentage goes up again. Not super up, because he's never that efficient, but that's the only thing that dinged him last year aside from his injuries. But yeah, thanks for that news, bro. Going back, speaking of Chicken Joy, Ty, let's go from some buckets of Chicken Joy. We have here Jimmy Buckets and Uncle Chris. So I guess in the first three rounds, Jimmy Buckets is the player that actually slides always. Always. In any league, I usually see him slide. What can you tell about Jimmy Buckets aside from his very gorgeous hair that he has just recently cut? He's him ready, but he always miss games.
He does. Even since his Chicago days, he's been prone to missing games here and there, and there's been no issue. I think they prime himself or prime the team, particularly at Miami, with Spo getting them ready for the playoffs. So I think you would need to expect him to sit quite a few games this season. Having said that, he did play. I'm just checking here. He played 57 games last season, so a significant chunk was on the sidelines. But then again, his per game value was 17th per basketball monster. So that's pretty big for someone that you could potentially get in the third round, potentially even fourth. I've seen him slip to fourth in a few leagues. I believe I saw one or two locked on fantasy bowl leagues. He did slip into, I think, the end of the third as well.
And speaking of the number of games, something I noticed is that majority of the great players actually plays plus or minus 60 plus games. So it's either like 55-ish and then 60 plus-ish. So in Roto, that's not going to be a problem. In head-to-head, I guess it's just a matter of like really embracing what you get out of Jimmy Butler. You'll get a very solid 50 plus games, and if you're fine with that, if you've created a very good players around him, I don't have any problem about it. It's just about really picking the spot when where you draft Jimmy Butler, because the past seasons people always have this hope that hey, maybe this is the year that Jimmy Butler goes 60, especially that they actually missed getting James Harden, they actually missed getting Kevin Durant, they actually missed getting Donovan Mitchell. So um, that's the reason why people are hoping. But if you get him third round, especially fourth round, that's going to be a big value. Especially that he has this uh, he can give you a lot of assists and steals in a forward position. So it's like a free point guard when you draft in respect to positional rankings. CP3, bro,
Absolutely. He does have a very unique, well, I was just going back to Jimmy Bucket's very
go
unique
go.
stat set. Great steals, great efficiency. Doesn't hit many threes though, so very unique. But yeah, end of third. If you could get him around the end of third, I think that's a solid pick. CP3, similar situation. CP3 is quite difficult to rank for me. I actually had both of these guys in my locked on fantasy bowl squad, which is quite unique as well. Again, efficient player. Assists is another scarce category, so you need to look out for your assists. But CP3's scoring output has decreased quite substantially over the last couple of seasons. He's taken a back seat to Book, so Devin Booker has gone up the ranks, while CP3's slowly gone down. But I think the assists are extremely important. So I have no issue with drafting CP3 in the 3rd or the 4th round as well.
Agree. Actually, something that bothers me over his age and the points drop is more of like the recent issues within the Phoenix Suns organization. So that's actually something that I, I I'm more interested to really monitor and check if that matters for some reason, because um given that CP3 is someone who might end up his career living like the Allen Iversons and the Charles Barkleys, he really wants to win. He really wants a chip, and I really think
He does, and you constantly see CP0 across Twitter whenever they talk about championships. But he does want to win, so I think he will push. He will push Phoenix a little bit harder. They'll need that leadership. They're going through a bit of a tumultuous period at the moment, but I think someone like CP3 will stand up and take them through the hard times.
agree, and to be honest, for me, CP3 is kind of like a saver pick than Jimmy Butler per se per game basis, because I mean Jimmy Butler's concern was, aside from load management, is his injuries. But on the other hand, CP3 in the past few seasons haven't really had a big injury. I mean, remember
No, you're
his
right, and people always consider him an injury-prone person, but I think the last time was when he was at Houston, and that was quite a few years ago. So I think he's been relatively healthy over the last few seasons. So I'd pick him, and if I had to choose between the two, if we're doing an ADP battle, I would probably pick Chris Paul over Jimmy Butler here.
There you go, there you go. Next up, the unicorn. Kristaps Porzingis is getting a lot of steam this season, but still, I noticed that people are still, torn between getting hype for Kristaps Porzingis. Some are just probably has some hatred still because of past seasons, and Shea Gilgeous Alexander. So I'll start off with SGA on this side, because I'm an SGA fan. I think SGA actually is one of the kind of like smoothest guard young studs in the league right now. If you actually check how he plays, he's super collected, super calm the way he plays. And then if only the OKC isn't tanking, I do believe he has a chance to be a first round value. He can actually give a first round value because he is a good rebounder for a guard. He actually is a good defender for a guard, and then he actually shoots uh decent from the outside, because those are the things that I love when I try to get some point guards or shooting guards start of my drafts. They should actually shoot threes, rebound decently, definitely have some steals, good free throw percentage, and of course can score. So unfortunately, after praising him, he actually plays in the OKC Thunder. That alone, plus Project Wemby, to be honest, this is gonna be the title of our show is people that hate or dodging for in drafting. Uh, um, I'm not really comfortable in drafting SJ, at least for this season, unless it's possibly late mid, around 70, I guess. 60, 70. That's my comfort zone. How about you?
I'm avoiding, and I don't think he gets to 60 or 70. I think someone will take the plunge and take him before that, so he won't ever be on any of my teams, unfortunately, and I will dodge him. And I think tanking for Victor is number one priority. That's a game changer for any dynasty or any squad out there. So I think OKC will be tanking, and they'll be tanking hard, and any minor injury will be a lengthy sideline period for SGA. And you talked about him potentially being a first round value. I don't see him at that level. I think he's at most maybe a second rounder, third rounder. Last season, he had a great season. He was only ranked 34th per game. only hitting 1.6 threes per game. So I don't see him stepping up to a first round value. But who knows? In a few years, when they've got OKC and they've got the Thin Towers running things with SGA and Giddy, our man Giddy from Australia, um, who knows? I think he could be. But for this season, I'm avoiding.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the reason behind my support of him being a first rounder is he actually played around third round value to second round value in seasons wherein he doesn't have any good players beside him. So the defense is actually focusing on him the most. So imagine if, like you mentioned, he has better players. Maybe just maybe when those percentages gets fixed, that's my hope. That's my hope. But yeah, it's actually a good point. Kristaps Porzingis, bro, to be honest, I like him. I've been drafting him whenever I get a chance in the third to fourth round, especially the moment when bigs are gone. Because like what I mentioned earlier, getting blocks is super scarce. Getting blocks with good free throw percentage is much scarce. So I guess that's the reason why I like Porzingis. And then getting blocks with good percentages that can score, that's more scarce. But then again, he's an injury prone player. So, bro, do you think he'll finish the season without getting injured?
Uh, Probably not. However, I love him. He's on my hometown keeper league. I was able to pick him up. I think I traded for him, and I think he's worth maybe a fifth rounder. So great value. He ended the season last year, or last season with Washington, probably definitely in the first couple of round value, and he ended up. I'm just checking here. He ended up Kristaps Porzingis. Where is he? Very high up in the standings. So 18th per game. For the entire season. He only played 51 games, but that's tremendous value. And like you said, unicorn statistics, high blocks, great efficiency. I think he's going to be tremendous this season.
Additionally to that, bro, I think Washington wants to win. I've been
Mm-hmm.
saying this in my past episode. I've noticed that they're trying to go what the Phoenix Suns did a few years back, wherein they tried building, and while building, they really strive hard to win, even with those games that you can actually just rest. So it's very noticeable when they ended last season, wherein we were expecting Kristaps Porzingis to just rest because there's a lot of no bearing games, but still he actually tried to play, and then they're actually playing and executing their system like how they usually execute when they are against like a more serious game. So that alone for me is like additional motivation if you're having doubts. But yeah, it's stats wise unicorn. Um, let's just
Absolutely.
quick.
In that golden period at Washington after the trade, he played 17 games. He was the 14th ranked player. And yes, that was without Beal. Beal was sidelined at the time. But I think the usage will still be high next to Beal. Monty Morris will be feeding both of those guys. I think they've got a good support crew around them. Probably playing for a play-in spot, maybe an eighth seed, but I think they've got a lot to play for this season. So KP all the way for me.
And that point actually pushes me to really love more, to get some more Porzingis and Bills in my teams because like what DMAC mentioned, being in the play-in tournament is hard for them to do. So there's more reason for them to play Bill more and Kristaps more. Additionally, DMAC mentioned about usage. And then if you check out the Wizards lineup, majority of the players that they will play with aren't like usage getter. Like after him and Bill, who are like kind of like a black hole in usage. Monte Morris doesn't, uh, want some usage. And then the rest, maybe Kuzma gets some, but Rui and Denny Avdia, and there's a lot of role players that doesn't need usage. So I guess they're gonna eat as much as they can in Washington DC. Going back here to some comments here, so Dwayne Nino says that is trying to wait for the YouTube stream, but it's in FB. It's actually in both, but hopefully YouTube actually successfully streamed. James Vincent Kong says, any tips for 16th pick, 13th pick? Oh, that's a lot of picks. 14th team, 9 cat. I'm planning on taking either Halle Dame, who's Kyrie Irving, I guess. I'm thinking of getting Ant PG, or shall I pick Gobert? So it's either Halle Dame or Kyrie on the first, and then partnering with Ant or PG, or maybe Gobert. What do you think here, DMAC?
I see Ant is, I see Anthony Edwards is being drafted really high this season.
Yeah,
Too high for my liking. I think it's too high. Yes, he's got huge potential and he's going to be a stud. He's already a stud. But I think, start of that second, it's a little bit rich for me for Anthony Edwards. So if I had to pick between Ant and PG, I would lean towards the PG.
yeah, I would agree. But I would also understand if you pick Anton Edwards, because a lot of theme actually specifically for this season is just getting younger and players that is expected to play 70 plus. So probably that's the reason why they wanted Anthony Edwards that early. Next up, let's talk about Draymond's right hook and Klay Thompson. So, let's talk about Draymond first. I remember those days or those seasons wherein Draymond is a solid second to third rounder just because of what he brings, like those out of position stats from a center eligible player, right? Um, Now he's been what? He's currently ranked at, let me see, in Yahoo 80th. I I do understand that he doesn't score that much, so that's gonna be a hole. But those concerns are applicable in the past seasons wherein people are drafting him way early. So given the categorical scarcity of points, it's going to be hard to really build around Draymond if you pick him within the first four picks, right? Now, given that he's around 80 and sometimes falls down up to 100, I think there's value there. I do understand, aside from that, him not scoring, as well as him getting injured, and he's actually older, and then plus his right hook. People kind of like, hated not only his fantasy game, but also his antics personally. So how about you, bro? What can you say?
Yeah, his stats are again very unique, and you would need to be punting points if you did want to own him and get some value. And I guess he's a great pairing with CP3 for a similar sort of role. I just quickly punted points for last season's stats, and he's a top 50 player when you punt points, which is great value
Yeah.
when you can get him at the moment for around that 100th pick. Um, and even without punting, I think he's still a solid player as well.
Yeah, and I remember there was a question about Draymond Green few days ago, and then he was asking me, um, wh- who could I partner with Draymond Green? I told him that if you drafted Domantas Sabonis as your primary big, getting Draymond Green as your possibly third big in your roster could be beneficial. It it meshes with Sabonis's ability to give dimes, so he'll be strong at assist. Plus, it covers Sabonis's deficiency of defensive stats, and it covers Sabonis's points covers Draymond's deficiency in scoring. So probably it might work, but yeah, Clay Thompson, bro. Initially, the 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 Golden State Warriors are saying they're monitoring Clay Thompson's case because he seems like he's still bothered with his past injury. Do you think it's a big concern or?
I don't think so. Clay looked good when he came back last season. Yes, you've got Jordan Poole still there. Jordan Poole's probably going to be a six man coming off the bench this season. Clay will rest from time to time, but he's a far bit removed now from the injuries. I like Clay, and you can get Clay at a decent pick this season. I've seen him drop to around that 90 or to 100 mark, where in previous seasons prior to the injury, he was perennially a top 50 performer. So I like him at value, of course. Having said that, for what he provides with the threes, you can get that stat quite late in the draft. So it really depends on your build. And if you do miss out on the threes that he does provide in large quantities, you can get that later, and you can also stream. So I love streaming, and you can easily stream threes off the waiver wire.
For sure, for sure. And then for me, the person that actually is the new Clay of this generation, I would say it's Desmond Bain. I think Clay's wonderful years before, I'm seeing a better version of that in Desmond Bain. So I guess that's like
I agree.
a quick comparison for me. I wasn't able to put in Nurkic here. I was about to, and I forgot to put him here. Nurkic, are you still interested in drafting Nurkic? Especially that, looking at it, the trend is there's a lot of bigs gone on that area. And then when you check the available centers, you see Nurkic. So if that happens, are you willing to take him?
I'm willing to take him. Yeah, I think he had a really good Eurobasket. He's got a full preseason under his belt. In previous years, he's had his preseason sort of interrupted with COVID and being homesick, and he's had all sorts of interruptions in previous seasons. Dame's come back. I know that Dame and Nurkic are really tight, so I think all rumors around Nurkic always been on the trading block has sort of been blocked because of Dame's relationship with Nurk. I like Nurk, and he had an extremely low block rate last season, which was quite unusual. He's not a huge block getter, but even for his standards, it was a really low year for him. So I like him at value again. So he's going around, I've seen around that 60, 70 mark, and I'm very happy to take him at that point.
Yeah, and then aside from that, people forget that Nurkic was kind of like the second usage getter of Portland before. Like, I mean, it's either the ball is always in Dame's hand or it starts off from Nurkic. That's the reason why a few seasons back, he's kind of like had a mini Jokic esque run because he's been giving dimes plus getting blocks, but without a efficiency in free throws. Yep, is the 60th rank in Yahoo currently. Next up, two injured guys, but two amazing big men that unfortunately aren't healthy this season. Last year they ended like with a bang, but Robert Williams and Triple J. Let's start off with Robert Williams. I guess Robert Williams is we kind of like trust him better than Triple J. But when is the right time to draft Robert Williams?
Roy, it really depends. If you've got an IR slot, I think you can take him around. I'd be comfortable taking him around that eighth round, ninth round, just for that per game upside. But if you don't have an IR slot or an IL slot, I think it's really hard to actually draft him this season. Just looking at last season's stats, he was the 16th ranked player in 9cat, so that's tremendous value. And again, with statistical scarcity with blocks, I think if you were to put him into your IR, comes back, and yes, he'll be rested, he'll be looked after, put in cotton wool. I think he can still bring great value to your team down the stretch. So I think 8th round with an IR, I would struggle without any injured reserve spots though.
Yeah, definitely agree on that. Another reason aside from his injuries, remember, Boston Celtics needs him. They need him badly. So when he comes back, he'll be eased in the starting lineup, and they will be very cautious about him. I noticed that Al Horford is getting a lot of praise from the coaching staff. There's a lot of things happening in Boston right now, but I think they're saying that Al Horford is super ready this season. So despite this injury, I think they were prepared for it. So I do believe that Al Horford has some ankle juice uh, still in the left in the tank, and to be honest, is low key a value pick in his range. I'm actually wanting some Al Horford stacks.
I love Big Al. I think he's going to have a huge year, and reports are he won't be sitting back to backs. So that's great value as well. So a per game and a totals value, I think Al will be great until Robert Williams does come back. And like I said, they'll look after Robert Williams, make sure he's fit and firing for the playoffs. So I think Al's great value. And they don't have great depth. Boston don't have great depth in the front court either. So Al's going to be of huge value.
What are you saying, bro? They have Luke Cornett.
Luke Cornett. Yeah. The unicorn.
The unicorn.
The unicornet, yeah.
I mentioned this to George. I'm saying that, hey, Luke Cornett is a very interesting player because he's the lone player that Brad Stevens follow in his social media. So who knows, bro?
Oh, is that right? Is that right? Oh, I didn't know that. There you go. I
Next
can
up,
actually
people.
see Grant Williams having just on a side note, I can actually see Grant Williams. I know we'll probably get to some flyers later on, but I think Grant Williams could be a sneaky top 100 player this season. So just watch this space on that one.
Yeah, and then one thing that I also has been contemplating is Boston has tendencies to get role players, like just like they had Enes Kanter before. That's their kind of like strategy. So I'm seeing that they could actually get maybe Dwight Howard, Hassan Whiteside, those type of players just to play 15 minutes to 20 minutes to support Robert Williams just in case Luke Cornett want to work. And then, well, Noah Vonleh is playing for them. He actually had a good game. This right? Noah Vonleh is in their lineup, right? If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean they will be definitely check out available players. They miss Daniel Tice's Daniel Tice's backup for sure. Daniel Tice is actually a good player. Quickly for Triple
Yeah,
J.
I think a lot of small ball. Yeah, Triple J. I've learnt my lesson from previous seasons where they said that he would be a month or a couple of months, and then it ended up being most of the season. So I'm not touching him unless, again, I have an IR slot. So similar to Rob Williams, I would be comfortable taking him around that 8th to 9th round. But again, without an injured reserve slot, I won't be touching JJJ.
Yeah. The reason why I said quickly because I have a very, very quick statement for Triple J. This was actually mentioned by DMAC here. Never, ever trust the Memphis Grizzlies scouting and injury reports. we've learned our lessons, guys. It will take a good 1 year of solid and concise reports before they gain my trust back. Okay, before we end up with our special player here, let's quickly check out the news here. Pick one Jokic, then PG and Kawhi back-to-back pick later. So good luck, Papi Dwayne. If you'll pull a Jokic, then Kawhi and PG, that's gonna be a solid team. What's up,
That's
Papi?
huge, yeah.
Maduras Charles, we just drafted earlier. They signed back Blake Griffin, but I guess Blake Griffin is more of a Danilo Gallinari replacement for me. And then DMAC actually hit the spot here. Grant Williams is a very solid defender. I can see them actually play small ball in several strides. So yeah. And then lastly, I don't know why, but Ronnie, Mison, what's up? He mentioned Sengun. Whatever Sengun is, we love Sengun. I guess we could all agree on that. So the final player,
Absolutely.
Russell Westbrook. Um, I'll go first because I drafted him in the fantasy basketball, locked on fantasy basketball bowl, 11th round. I think I because this episode should be discussing about the players that kind of like people dodges, people hates, but it actually ended up me and Dima convincing you guys why you kind of like need to draft these people or players in a logical approach wherein you pick the timing and pick the places you draft them, right? So I'll go back to Russell Westbrook. I think if that's around last three picks of your draft and he's still available, given that majority of the times your last three picks, unless it's a very deep league, I think those are upside picks, right? So upside picks usually ends up in the FA eventually because you assume that hey, this player might go like for example you have what um who's the solid like for example Santi Aldama. So if you pick him there and then hoping that he starts and gets some minutes and take away minutes from Brandon Clark while Triple J is out, right? With that said, I think Russell Westbrook falls to that category. And then am giving a nudge to Russell Westbrook just because he'll definitely get minutes at least while they are still clicking because I think if it don't pan out, there's a big chance actually that Ham will sit his ass down and move forward. They are still trying to deal Russell Westbrook, I believe. Maybe it's going to be a good direction for Russell Westbrook, but it also depends on the team that will be getting Russell Westbrook. Because if it's a tanking team, then it won't be that good scenario. So let me pass the mic to Dima.
Roy, I know you picked him in the 11th round in your team. I like the pick. Like you said, it's a bit of an upside pick. Typically, I like to stream through those slots anyway. So 11th to 12th pick. So if it clicks and it works out, great. I've never had Westbrook on any of my teams in category leagues, but only because he's always gone too high. But I think if you can get him around the 11th, 12th pick, why not? Good upside. He's going to start for the Lakers, and while he's on the Lakers, he will get minutes. Having said that, the trade rumors are rife, and if he does get traded, it'll probably be to a non-contending team, and they will sit him. Chances are it may be someone like an Indiana for a future first pick. So they're not going to play him next to Halliburton, or they're not going to play him over Halliburton. So yeah, while he's on the Lakers, I think it's a solid pick in the 11th or 12th.
Yeah, and then maybe it works. He played decent, quite decent in the preseason. So that's high hopes, especially that he actually can score. He can actually give you dimes while giving you a lot of turnovers and shooting bricks. So if it's not within your appetite, then totally fine. But again, this is just giving some justification on why maybe we would be, considering or having an argument in drafting Russell Westbrook. Because if you messed up with your draft, especially, hey, I'm missing points. Usually, that's the issue. You miss scorers or you miss people that gives you assist or blocks. Given that it's going to be hard to get some blocks, maybe you get Mason Plumlee in the later rounds. You can do that, but at least it's going to be fun to watch Plumlee's lefty, right? While it's going to be hard to watch Westbrook's bricks. So if that happens, I guess that's some motivation for you to draft Russell Westbrook. Okay,
And in
I
the
mean,
right build, I think he's going to be quite valuable in the right build. And I've listened to him in the media. He's been quite mature in recent weeks as well. So it could be changing of the tide for Westbrook.
yeah, he's been preaching about professionalism, and yeah, I watched that, and then I agree with you. He actually matured a lot. So this was the first episode of our weekly grind. I hope you really liked it. But before we end, we will be dropping some players that you don't usually possibly you don't think they are good picks. Maybe you haven't really thought of them being a player that can be picked in drafts. But I'll ask Dimak here. Drop a name or an NBA player that you think has a chance to have some fantasy relevance that people aren't talking about.
Roy, you actually stole my thunder earlier. You said Santi Aldama. So the last couple of weeks, he's getting some steam. So he's starting ahead of Brandon Clark for the Memphis Grizzlies while JJJ is out. We don't really know how long he's going to be out. I like Santi. He provides some different stats, good rebounds, some blocks, good threes. I think he's almost a mini unicorn. I like him. So he was going to be my pick. But someone else that's a little bit left field, Kendrick Nunn. So he is going to start for the Lakers. He's been running with the starters. Um, so I don't mind him. We saw him, what he did in his rookie year, and he was decent. So I think there's a little bit of value there for deeper leagues.
There you go. There you go. Well, it's going to be tough for me to get, but I think this is someone that I haven't heard anyone talk about. Uh, I don't know. I've been busy for quite some time. Let me drop in Gary Payton II. If you look at the Portland Trail Blazers backcourt, it's just Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons. So for me, if you eventually need some steals, and then if you need, it's kind of like a deep league, I really like Gary Payton II because I can see him actually getting a lot of minutes. He has some of this kind of like hidden upside, wherein if ever it's true for those theorists that thinks that hey, Portland Blazers will Damian Lillard is old, he won't finish this season, then I think Gary Payton II has some value. He's the energy guy of this group. Well, there's a lot of energy here. You have here Josh Hart. You have here, well, I hate Justice Winslow. So that's the reason why when I'm looking at their backcourt, I mean, there's a big chance Gary Payton II gets what, more than 20 minutes of playing time. And then I bet he'll give you 2 steals per game. So, well, that's for me. At least I found someone that, you know, actually, I didn't found, I kind of like tried to make a case, but then again, at least it's someone different. What do you think, bro? Is that far fetched?
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. It's not far fetched. He definitely brings value with steals. And if you're looking for steals late in the draft, even in a 12 teamer, yeah, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. And worst case, you just drop him for someone else.
Yeah, and then I'll make some, given that DMAC gave 2 names, let me drop Alexej Fokosevsky's name. I mean, maybe people are talking about it. I don't think people are talking about it that much. Um, we've been talking about Wemby. We've been talking about Kristaps Porzingis. I guess Alexej Fokosevsky is one of the unicorns as well. I could see him take a leap this season. Yeah, he has a lot of stats to bring. Given that, hey, I missed in points, he scores. Hey, I missed in rebounds. He actually is a good rebounder. Hey, I missed in assists. He's he's actually a big man playing a point guard role. Hey, I missed some blocks. Well, to be honest, he can give you a little bit of under a block or maybe point 0.6 to 7 blocks per game. So I really love some Alexej Pokusevski in my last picks if in standard drafts. So yeah, something that you got from us here in our weekly grind. So Papi DMAC, I'm giving back to you the table. Any parting words to our viewers?
Just want to say thank you for having me, Roy. It's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this being a weekly ritual. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Oh, there's one more question here or statement here. Let's just given that you've joined us late night. Papi Dwayne is saying that I've been avoiding Wood the past few years, but I like how he played in the preseason games. Yeah, um, he'll be playing majority of the big man role. I like him, especially that. So there's the there might be a strategy wherein, hey, I need to get some bigs. If you get all hype up with bigs, you'll end up getting a lineup that is solid in probably rebounds and blocks, but is that has less scoring. So what I'm trying to say is majority of the good bigs with defensive stats doesn't score. So I guess Christian Wood could be a decent option of a big man that can kind of like defend but still score. But take note that he's gonna really you're gonna really punt your free throws. So yeah, that's my take on Wood. How about you, bro? You do you like Wood?
I agree. I completely agree. I think Six Man of the Year award, he's second favourite in that, and he's looking really good in the preseason. So if you're punting free throws, um, great pick, great value, and even if you're not, I think he's still a solid mid rounder.
There you go. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Before we end, let me just quickly promote this. So, to all the Filipino viewers here, if you actually end up within the area in San Lorenzo Road near the Enchanted Kingdom in Santa Rosa, we are actually going 24 hours this coming October 14th to 17th because I'll be really strategizing my my fantasy my fantasy roster. So I'll take the chance to sell some soup. So go to our Secretong Parisan at San Lorenzo Road. Hey bro, when you come here in the Philippines, you have to drop by. You have to taste pares. Have you tried pares?
No, no,
Oh,
I haven't, but I look forward to it. That would be great.
this is Isaiah Stewart. It's a beef stew, and usually we
Beef
partner
stew.
we partner this soup with crunchy meat, like for example, pork meat, like lechon kawale, and then we also have pork intestine that is deep fried, and then bone marrow. So usually, you eat this if you want to go high blood or if you want your leg to ache. But this is a good beer match. That's why we call it October Fest because here in the Philippines we have what we call Oktoberfest. So usually getting drunk is really very evident this month. So let's see who will be joining us 24 hours on those days. Lastly, follow first our good friend here, DMAC, NBA Fantasy Bible at Twitter. Again, he's super super duper active there. Even me, I'm actually following him. I love his take. So follow DMAC. Also, for fantasy basketball page, I know this is just you already know this, but to people that haven't really checked out our content, we're available at Facebook Fantasy Basketball Pinas. We have a solid fantasy Facebook group. You should join here as well. DMAC NBA Fantasy League dash PH. So this is probably the biggest Facebook fantasy group in all of Facebook. So I've been bragging this to Josh Lloyd, and I'm trying to invite him. So the 70% to 80% are Filipinos, but we also have foreigners there. We're also available at YouTube and Spotify. I'll be cleaning that up, so we'll be ready to the more episodes of a Weekend Grind with DMAC, and then Twitter handle is NBA Fantasy Papi, and we are also available at Kumu. That's it, guys. Happy Sunday, and then I hope we get some rest and get ready for Monday. Few more days. Let's go, everyone. And this has been your Fantasy Papi, Papi Roy, with DMAC, Fantasy Basketball PH. Bye.
Bye, guys.